Hello everyone, bringing you another unboxing video today. Now, I'd never really planned these to be a massive part of the channel. It wasn't my initial intention. But when people started gifting me things, obviously I've really wanted to share those bits and pieces with you. And whenever a big lot of stuff comes in, I like to do videos on those as well, because there's interesting stuff to pull out, there's plenty to look at. This is a slightly different one. We're not looking at British or Empire kit that's arrived today. This is thanks very much to Kevin Mills, who's helped me acquire some of these bits and pieces and gifted me some bits and pieces previously. This is actually Dutch kit, and the reason for this, I've always been interested by the adaptations of British kit that went on after the Second World War. There was a large amount available surplus. We'd made huge quantities of it for use during the war, 1937 pattern webbing specifically, and we had enough to be able to supply at low cost to continental European armies. And quite a lot of surplus web equipment was basically bought up, as well as then new manufactured items being produced in those countries which were compatible with the British equipment, and then various adaptations and things being introduced along through the years to improve the equipment and modernise it, but always keeping back compatibility with the previous items of equipment, so that what was in stock was still usable. So you end up in the 1980s with essentially British and Empire troops and Commonwealth, well, British and Commonwealth troops by this point having moved on from the 1937 pattern, essentially entirely for frontline troops. Still a few cadets and second line troops maybe using 1937 pattern here and there, but the vast majority of it had disappeared from use. But the Dutch had essentially adapted the equipment right the way through into the 1980s, and so it's still very recognisable as 1937 pattern. So that's always interested me. It's final sort of swan song for the equipment, although obviously manufactured in another country and adapted somewhat, but still very recognisable, as I say. So that's what's arrived, and obviously we'll be having a look at this in more detail in the future. That's the whole point of buying it, is to have a look at. Obviously Kevin gifted me some items of Dutch uniform and so forth. It's very kind of him, and I've bought very cheaply quite a large consignment of Dutch bits and pieces and respirators and things he thought I might find interest as well, all thrown in as a job lot. So without further ado, we'll get on to opening the rather large box that's arrived from the Netherlands. Okay, so the problem we've got is we've got this massive box, which is not going to fit in frame. So what I'm going to do is open it up, move it to one side and get bits out and bring them into frame to look at as we go along. So let's get this opened up here. Let's see. That's one side. Right, okay. Here we go. Let's bring this round to this side here, if we can. There we go. Okay, so first thing I can see here is one of the, oh, there's loads of stuff in here. There are some of this stuff I know what it is, some of this stuff I know what's coming, some of the stuff has been put in by Kevin very kindly as other bits and pieces, other gifts and things. Right, at a shop we'll bring things in. So this is the sort of last pattern of haversack made with this equipment. As you can see, it's rubberized, and inside we've got a load of other bits and pieces. What do we have in here? These look like braces, potentially. Down out of the way, there we go. So yeah, I think we've got got a set of trouser braces or suspenders there, I think. Straps support the supporting straps for the pack. Set of mess tins. Okay, Dutch mess tins as well. So this is some of the stuff I wasn't aware of. So bandage, field dressing, 1985. Details on the back there. Okay, what I think is a mess tin cover. Drawstring bag there, and cutlery. I wasn't expecting half of this, so this is, I wasn't expecting all the small kit, certainly the sort of contents. That's definitely not what I was expecting. Another couple of smaller dressings, scrim scarf, face veil, depending on use, and then I think this is going to be a Dutch, I think this is a Dutch ground sheet cape. In fact it is. It's essentially, you can see the tab there. I will have to open this up at some point and take a look at it. It's essentially a version of the British Mark 7, but the Dutch carried on using them for much longer than the Brits did, so made a copy, and I believe that's what this is here. the green example of, or brownish green, olive drab. And then you can see the interior here. So we've just got one divider there. There's no divider for the mess tins, but it is essentially a 1937 pattern haversack made in this rubberized material. And you can see has L straps and so forth attached there. So something to have a look at in more detail going forward. Move this stuff out of the way for the minute and get the next bit out. What we have underneath that is a entrenching tool, obviously introduced with the Linklow and then the Alice equipment sets in US service and widely copied and used. I believe this is a Dutch example. Kevin had a chat about this, and it's odd. The cover has a US 00 NATO stock code, but obviously made in the Netherlands, which is slightly strange. And we have a folding entrenching tool in there, which will be a useful pouch filler. I don't have a British example or a US example of a folding tool, so that will actually be quite generally useful as a pouch filler for when I need it for the equipment, say the PLCE British equipment, or the M1967 carrier. It'll make a nice filler for those, much as I hope to get British and American versions eventually. For the meantime, it will be a useful pouch filler, I suppose. Let's get this out here. This is full of stuff as well. This is when it gets in frame. This is the pack from the system, and again, this is essentially a 1908 pattern pack, but made in the vinyl. As you can see, it has the loops on the bottom to take the supporting straps. It works in exactly the same manner. We'll have a look at the contents in just a moment. On the back there, the buckles and everything work in exactly the same way. In fact, you have a plastic version of the... Oh no, these are metal. I think, are these? Oh no, they are all metal. They just felt plasticky. I think it's just the finish on them. Yes, no, they are aluminium, I think, actually, the buckles. But as I say, an interesting, very late adaptation of the design made in this rubberized material. I'll open this up here, and again, I'm not entirely sure what's in here. Various items that I'm not aware of having bought that Kevin has given to me. So this is a respirator haversack, I think. Yes. So this is to take the C3 and later the FM12. I think by the time you've seen these in DPM, to the FM12, but it's based very closely on Canadian practice in Dutch DPM, which is nice. Obviously, the Dutch extensively used DPM, very close to, but not exactly the same as the British DPM, which is again sort of an adaptation of British camouflage by another country, which is interesting. Similarly interested in New Zealand DPM. Dutch DPM is very interesting as well from that point of view. Something of very easily recognisable as 1937 pattern, the braces and a brace attachment, as you can see. Various other bits in here. The belt, which has eyelets in the bottom to take American style hanger hooks on the canteen carriers. Another respirator haversack. Now this, I think, is a Canadian example. Looking at it, it's got all the Canadian plastic fittings and so forth. It may be Canadian made. If not, it's a Dutch copy. New markings in there, but essentially copied from the Canadian 1964 pattern equipment. That's another respirator haversack. Leave that to one side. Of course, the Dutch used the Canadian C3 quite a long time before moving on to the FM12. I'm not sure if there was an interim design that they used, but we have two different types of two different types of canteen carrier here, both made of rubberized material, one of which is very much US inspired, as you can see. This one is as well, but doesn't have quite the same features and so forth, doesn't use lifter dot fasteners. We have one each of those two designs there, as you can see. Different details on the bottom and so forth. We'll have a look at these in more detail at some point going forwards. Put them to one side as well, and then we have the other supporting strap, another L strap, a holster, a Browning holster, again made of this vinyl material, with hanger hooks on the back to attach to the belt, as you can see. And knocking the camera, getting a bit overloaded with stuff here. Thank you for all this, Kevin. And another L strap there. So There's a missing brace attachment in there. I only appear to have one brace attachment for the present. Maybe the other one is in the box somewhere. But yes, there we go. That is the contents of the pack, and obviously the pack itself. Move that to one side. There are some other bits and pieces in here still. We have a vinyl version of the respirator haversack with a respirator inside. I think it's vinyl, this material, it's rubberized material. This is, I believe, a Dutch C3, which, here we go, yep. So we have a Dutch issue C3 respirator, which differs a little bit from the Canadian design, which will be something interesting to talk about as well. You can see in there, it is a C3, has the nasal cup and everything in there. Obviously the big 60mm filter intake, essentially a development of the light anti-gas respirator. But it's quite interesting, obviously, for point of view of comparing it later on to the Canadian example, which I now have as well. So that is interesting. Move that out of the way too. And we have a final respirator haversack in here, and I think this one will contain an FM12, if I'm not mistaken. Closes in a similar sort of manner. But yes, we have here, there we are. Had the harness looped over the face piece there, but as you can see, and this is dated 1997. You can see there. So that's a lovely thing to have as well. I do have a British police issue, former police issue example of one of these, but it's nice to see this. A Dutch, I think this is a Dutch production filter as well. There's a native stock number on it somewhere. There we go. So yeah, quite an interesting thing to have. So so there it is. That is the contents of the box, and again we have the interesting DPM haversack there, as you can see. So there it is. That's everything we've got in the box here. Thank you once again very much, Kevin. So there we are. That was a look through some Dutch kit sent over by Kevin Mills. Very kind of him to put that stuff together for me. As I say, really didn't cost very much, so I couldn't say no, and the opportunity to make some interesting, what I hope will be interesting content for the channel, looking at that going forward, I couldn't really pass up on. It's always something that's interested me, as I said earlier, is the development of British-inspired kit post-war, because we did influence quite a lot of countries, as well as the US, of course. We did influence quite a lot of Western powers in Europe, NATO countries, in their equipment sets and what they would adapt and introduce after the war. So there we are. That's a brief look through it today. There'll be videos on that going forwards. If you'd like to see those, then make sure you've subscribed to the channel and hit the little notification button, the little bell down below, which of course notifies you when I upload future videos. If you really like my videos and you'd like to support the channel, there is of course a link to Patreon and PayPal down below. Thank you very much to those people who've already supported me through there. It's very, very kind of you, and I really appreciate it. If you'd like to vote on the videos and things going forward, the Mannequin of the Month videos specifically, if you support the channel on the Patreon corporal tier, you get the chance to vote in a poll on there, which might interest some. There's of course also the Facebook and the Instagram page where I put photographs up of the collection, the Mannequins of the Month and so forth. Make sure to check those out as well, links in the description. And finally, if you'd like to contact me, there is an email address down at the bottom of the description for the video. If you open that up, you'll see it down there. And if you want to write, get in touch, share photographs, that sort of thing, it's probably a good place to do it. Facebook Messenger as well, but the email address is a good place to get in touch. I check the mailbox at least weekly. But that's everything for now. So until next time, bye for now.